Housing prices have been skyrocketing in the U.S., and a lot of things that we hear talk about how it's really difficult and maybe even impossible to buy houses these days for regular people. Is that really true? That's going to be our topic of conversation on today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning. Hi, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. Before we go on to talk about housing affordability, please hit subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and you can help.
Well, listen, I'm interested in getting into this topic. It reminds me, I moved to Madison, almost 30 years ago from the Milwaukee area, and I thought, oh, good, going from a bigger city to a smaller city, I'm going to save a lot of money on housing, and that turned out not
Madison,
to be the case.
Cheap.
Right?
From Wisconsin standards, yeah.
And living in Chicago, right, and different things. We hear this. I know I hear it. I think you do too, about just the price of housing. I had seen something recently that said since the pandemic started in 2000, median house prices in the United States are up 27% in like 4 years or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's so significant. Like, hey, there's some facts that go with this. But I was reading this article, Bridget, and we'll pull up a spreadsheet or a little graphic here that comes from the U.S. Census Bureau, and it talks about the home ownership rate. And sort of the thought process that I hear from people is, God, back in the old days, right? Back in the Leave It to Beaver days, you could have one income. I didn't need to have this, and we could have a house. And take a look at what these numbers, again, come from the U.S. Census Bureau, is that since the 1960s, the home ownership rate has been somewhere in the low 60s, 60 to 65%. Right? And before that, less than that. So as I looked at this, I thought, wait a minute, the evidence, I hear people say, and you see the value of houses, it's going up, and yet the home ownership rate hasn't changed in 50 years, in our lifetimes, right? So what's going on? There's two different stories that are coming out there, and I'm not exactly sure what to make about it, but I'm interested in hearing your comment, what your thoughts, and kind of dig through this here.
Yeah, well, I think that we know that the price of homes seems to be going up right now, so that is going to make home ownership higher, and but yet still amount of people that have homes is steady.
Right.
I don't know. So people aren't selling their homes. It's like if the price was going up so high, people would sell their homes and do something else with the money, wouldn't they?
Well, but then they need a place to stay.
Yeah,
I thought that too, right? This is really interesting. Just think I thought, oh, geez, I'll do this, but I still need a place to stay. So that one thing I thought, looking at this, is going, okay, golly, maybe your folks, my folks, bought their home in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and we own our homes for a long time.
Right.
I've owned my home for a long time. You go, maybe that's just a matter of they haven't sold. But then I look at, your folks aren't in their house anymore. My folks, at some point, you go, right, those people that bought their houses in the 50s are probably not living in that same house right now.
Yeah.
Right? And so you think about that.
I have to say that I think people's standards have doubled.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
So when I was a kid, back in the old days, back in the Stone Age, we had 8 people living in a 4-bedroom house with 1.5 baths.
How did you do it? You didn't have your own bedroom? Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Right.
I didn't have my own bedroom.
Did you have to walk uphill both ways to school?
No, it was flat. Yeah. We had a bus. But no, we shared space. And we had one phone. We didn't have phones. We weren't carrying around our phones. We had one phone with a long cord. So anyway, and this house was not, it probably, I don't know, I don't think it was 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So
for 8 people, isn't that something? Yeah.
Yeah. And so none of my siblings live in that crowded of a situation now.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure we all pay more for our homes. With one exception, let's say, like a percentage of our income, but we're getting more.
Yeah, right.
We have more space than we had when we were a kid.
Yeah, I think that idea of it's unaffordable these days. There's some factualness to it, right? I mean, the value of the median sale price, those are the numbers. The prices have gone up quite a bit just in the last few years. But then also that context of what are you getting, right? I know I had seen data going back into the early 1980s that the average size house today is 50% larger. The average new house being built today, 50% larger than the average new house being built back in the 80s.
Yet the birth rates are going down.
Right, yeah, do the math on that one, right?
So, everybody's got more space, which
Right.
is fine. That's
It's a
lovely.
choice. It's a choice, though,
exactly.
right?
I like
That's the
having more
thing.
space. I got a lot bigger house. It's
Right.
great, but
Right.
it's not. I can't afford a house.
Right.
It's
I can't afford, maybe I can't afford the thing that I want. I
Right.
want to have all that space, and it gets more difficult. And I still go
I
back to
want
that.
to live in a certain neighborhood.
But that chart that we pulled up earlier, where it says that the homeownership rate hasn't changed, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what exactly to make of that one, because it certainly feels like, well, less people can afford to own their houses right now, but that's not what the data shows.
Yeah.
But that feeling comes in. I completely agree with you. It's what do I want? I had a friend of mine that was just looking for new housing after a life change, and so I was just doing a little bit of digging because I enjoy doing this stuff, right? And kind of thinking about and kind of her approach was, oh yeah, it's really hard to find anything affordable. I
Right.
just can't. And my folks are both teachers where we grew up, and where I live here in Middleton, the houses that my parents, I might have grown up in had I grown up in this area that a one teacher or two teacher household could afford. Yeah, golly, those things. I mean, the pricing, it's not very affordable to live within walking distance of school like I did growing
Right.
up and things. But you take that same house and you go outside of town a half hour. Where you live, a half hour is what, a mile drive sort of thing, right? But here you go out a little ways and you go, geez, you can find something very affordable. And then that dichotomy comes in. Well, hang on a second, I want to live where I can ride my bike to school or whatever. Yeah, there's trade-offs. It's not
Right.
that you can't find a house that's affordable for $200,000. It's that, yeah, but I don't want to live 40 miles away from where I go to work, and it's these trade-offs on
Right.
things.
And like in Chicago, there's all kinds of affordable places to live, but it's again similar to your thing. It's not necessarily in the most flashy neighborhood.
Yeah.
So the
It comes to me, it's interesting too. I remember when I mentioned first moving to Madison, I thought, we can get an apartment there, and quickly figured out that some of those places that were really cheap were cheap for a reason, like unsafe
Sure.
neighborhoods and things.
Yeah,
you go like,
but
okay,
there's
that's
plenty
not
of-
the case,
there's-
right?
In Chicago, of course, there's unsafe neighborhoods, but
Right.
but there's plenty of safe neighborhoods that are just working class. Lots of people live there, and it's totally fine.
Right.
And one of the things I like about Chicago is it's in the middle of the country, but it's also like in the middle of the housing prices.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's not. It's more expensive than other places, certainly, but then it's less expensive than a lot of the major cities, and a lot of people actually like it for that point. But I will
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
I'll stop extolling the virtues of Chicago.
Well, it was. You were talking about the different locations and things. So when my friend was looking, like I said, I decided to dig in. I went on, I think Zillow or one of those sort of things, and said, "All right, well, geez, I don't think it is affordable around here." And I was really surprised at the number of houses. And I can't remember if I used 200,000 or 250,000 as sort of like, okay, what can we afford if that's our budget for buying a house? And there were again some of these places where it was like a tear down house. You go, okay, like that's not what we're talking about. But there were places 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home in an upscale, like last 10 years newish neighborhood, and go for those price ranges, and I was really surprised. Hey, that's pretty nice. But to your point before about what do we all need to have
Right.
in our lives, right? You go, well, geez, I want to have, in her case, maybe room for the grandkids to come over, and an extra place for them to play, and a big enough yard for having 2 dogs instead of 1 dog, and these things. You go, well, wait a minute, yeah, it's a 1,000-square-foot home, but when you're a single person, what do you need? 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and a kitchen. Some of that stuff that back in the old days was perfectly fine, and now we go like, hey, we can't manage with that level. And again, I'm with you. It's the choice. I've got plenty of
Right.
space, but it's because I chose to do those things, and I can't complain about I've got a big yard for the dog to run around in, and it costs so much, and yeah, it does, but that's a decision to make, right? It's not that I can't do other options, and that I think is really important as we think about making all kinds of financial decisions.
Right.
Where we get locked into, well, here's how it is.
But
Go ahead.
I think it's especially important with housing because I think that's one factor. You make that decision, and then it drives a lot of other outcomes for as long as you're in that house or in that situation. So if you overbuy on a house, it's hard to save money. You get into scarcity mode. It's just a drag.
Yeah, different than some other things you purchase, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is different. And you make this decision, and it's kind of hard to get out of it. And so it is a bigger decision, and it's a lot easier to trade up in 5 to 10 years than it is to deal with all the negatives
Being overextended.
of being
right?
overextended. Yeah.
Yep. One of the things I think about on our discussions here is like, how do we use this, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things, we've seen this in several recent episodes, it's number one, what are the facts? It
Right.
feels like it's impossible to buy a house, and there's evidence of that, but what are the facts on some of the things? What do houses actually sell for before? What have they gone for? And then one is just know the facts.
Right.
And then the other one is this decision-making
Right.
point of, all right, what do I really need? Yeah, I want, what are the difference between needs and wants? It sounds so simplistic, but at the same time, it's simple, but it's not simplistic on making that decision about what's really important to a person.
Yeah, and if you can flip the script from I can't afford anything to what can I afford?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Isn't that
I
it?
could get this.
Right.
And I think that you might end up being happier if you can flip the script versus focusing on all the stuff that you can't get in your price range.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great place to wrap things up here. Again, I'm John Shear. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mamel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both proud members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. We're both taking clients, but if you're interested in a planner who thinks like we do in your area, you can check out acplanners.org.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.